Happy Ganesh Puja, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Storytime at 9. Radica. Yeah. So I hope you had a great day today. As you know, we have been having this program every Saturday at 9 p.m. Live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And of course, you can tell your friends that if they miss the live session, it's always there. Or if you happen to miss any of the sessions, it's anyway there on YouTube, Bakul, YouTube/Bakul Foundation, or on Facebook. They can always go back to the videos there. And as you know, every Saturday we are taking you to another country, a different country, where we have a storyteller who will be taking us through a journey to that country and introduce you to her country through stories and by talking about it. And as you know, there's a question and answer session at the end of the session. And today we have my good friend Radica Mahase, as you can see there. So Radica is here from Trinidad and Tobago, and I think Sampriti had commented she looks Indian. Well, if her ancestors had not moved to Trinidad, maybe a century back, she'll tell us her story. She would have been Radhika or maybe Radhe. I don't know. So because she went to Trinidad, she became Radica, right? So anyway, Radica is a good friend of mine. We know each other from 2015, and she has been a big well-wisher of our work. And so when I told her that I would want her to tell stories, she readily accepted. I'm very thankful to her. Now Radica looks very young, but she is an eminent historian, and she has particularly written. She's an authority and done a lot of research on the history of Indians and how they traveled to Trinidad on work. So she also works with autistic children. So she has a foundation and she works with autistic children. So we will hear from Radica. She'll tell us stories and tell us about her country. And as I said, you can ask questions. And just to tell all of you, there's a feedback form shared, on the platforms wherever you are. And please fill up the feedback after the session is over so that we know what you think, what you like, what you didn't like, and that will help us help you better. Now, but before we move to Radica, there's a little promo video. There's a campaign that we started last Saturday, on 15th August. I would just like you to watch this promo of a few seconds, and then we'll move to Radica.
Give me freedom, give me fire, give me home, take me higher. Give me freedom, give me fire, give me home, take me higher.
Yeah, so you just saw the promo to our campaign. Well, all of you are able to participate in this program because you have a digital screen, you have a digital device, be it a laptop or a smartphone or whatever. But think about so many children who do not have that access. They also have online classes, but they don't have a phone by which, or a laptop by which they can access that. And that is why we started this campaign asking people, whoever has a spare smartphone, any smartphone with an active battery that works, please donate it to Bakul. We will give you the details later. It was there. We'll share it again. But now let's start with Radica's session. So over to Radica. Welcome, Radica, to today's session. And over to you.
Hello, everyone. It is so great to be here today. Thank you all so much for having me. So as Sujit said, I am Radica, and tonight you are traveling to my country, Trinidad and Tobago. So let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. Just 1 second. So I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see a little bit about my country, if my screen will show up now to share. So while I'm getting the screen to share, I am from Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago is located in the West Indies. You know, so many times when I tell people where I am, where I'm from, especially when I visit India and I tell people where I'm from, they look at me like, but you look Indian. So, you know, you're Indian, you're just like us. And in a bit, I'll tell you about that history, and I will tell you about why I look Indian. I'm not getting to share it. Okay, here it is, finally. So, as I said, I am from Trinidad and Tobago. I love beaches. I don't mind going to the beach every single day. I love food. And my best friend is Santa Claus, but I only get to see him at Christmas time. And there is Santa Claus and I. My country, Trinidad, is made up of two islands. If you look at a map, you will see Trinidad and you will see a smaller island, Tobago. Trinidad is the larger island, and Trinidad is the island that I live on. Now, we are located 14,000 kilometers from India. That's very far. And my country is located near to South America. You can see in the map again that it's very, very near to Venezuela. And in Trinidad, I lived in a little tiny place called Claxton Bay. It's highlighted there in blue. Claxton Bay is on the central western part of the island. And I love living here because I can see the sea from my window. That coconut tree on sunset is a sunset that I see on so many evenings from my window. The sea is just 5 minutes away from where I live. And I live between two big industries. I live between a cement factory and an oil refinery. Now, I have not been lucky enough to visit Bakul as yet. I do hope that on my next visit to India, I will be able to visit Bakul and see the wonderful work that they're doing. But I have to tell you all, I knew about Bakul before it was even started. You see, my good friend Sujit and I were linemen. Right. Lyman is a word that we use here to mean hanging out. So one day, Sujit and I were Lyman, and we met up in Delhi. It was a very long time ago. I think it was almost probably 10 years, 15 years. And when we were Lyman, Sujit told me about how he wanted to go back to his home city and he wanted to start this library. I was so impressed. Then he told me that he wanted to run this library with volunteers, and I was even more impressed. And then 6 years ago, when I started my NGO here in Trinidad, I copied his idea of volunteerism so that my NGO here is also run by volunteers. And I am so excited for the good work that Bakul have been doing. And I really hope to visit one day and and to get some inspiration from Sujit and all the other volunteers there. I hope that some of my volunteers would be able to visit as well. So congratulations, Bakul, on this wonderful event that you all are doing here online. And I feel very happy and very privileged to be able to read two stories to you today. The first story is about cricket. Cricket is very popular in my country. And when I visit India, people would ask me, well, where are you from? And I would normally say, well, I'm from the West Indies. And they'll say, that's where Brian Lara is from. And I would very proudly say, yes, Brian Lara is from my country. So the first story that I want to read to you is about Brian Lara and cricket. And I'm going to start with that story now. It's called Brian Lara's World Record. So in 1965, a man named Gary Sobers, he was a Bajan. That means he was from Barbados. And he was one of the best cricketers in the world. In 1965, he made a world record. He scored 365 runs. That's 365 runs. That's one run for every single day of the year. So he scored 365 runs in a cricket match against Pakistan at Sabina Park in Jamaica. And when he did that, he created a new world record. And this was major. He became very famous for it. And since that day, so many batsmen have been trying to break that world record, but nobody managed. Until April 18, 1994, when a rising star, Brian Lara, was on mark to break that record. Lara had already scored 320 runs in his innings, and he only needed another 46 to break Gary Sobers' record. And if he would do that, he would become the best cricketer in the world. So the West Indies was playing a cricket match against England, and it was the fifth and final test and the venue was Antigua Recreation Ground. As early as 8 o'clock in the morning, long lines were seen outside the ground. Thousands of cricket fans line up, hoping to get into the ground because they had come to see Brian Lara break the world record. One short, bald-headed man standing in the line started talking excitedly this boy is the greatest batsman in the world, and today he will prove that he's going to be the greatest batsman in the world. Okay, well, we will see. Time alone will tell. Time alone would really tell. Even Lara himself could not tell what would happen. As one would expect, he too was in a little mental turmoil. He had been up since 4 o'clock that morning, thinking about how he was going to achieve this feat. How could he possibly achieve this goal? How could he possibly break this record? His mental anguish was not eased when he arrived at the ground and he see thousands of people there waiting to see him break this record. And to make it worse, everybody was there talking about how Lara going to break Gary Sobers' records. So he was a little apprehensive, he was a little scared, but that's okay. The match started at 10 o'clock. And you could see from very early that Lara was having some difficulty dealing with the challenge at hand. He wasn't batting as good as he bat the day before. You know, you could see that he was under pressure. But anyway, Brian Lara continued to battle on. As the morning play won, his confidence increased, and he began scoring boundaries after boundaries like he did the day before. It was not long before he began to surpass all those big scores that all these other great test batsmen had made. The first score that he passed was 333 that was made a few years earlier by a cricketer named Graham Gooch from England. 1 run later, he surpassed another score, 334, made by another great cricketer named Don Bradman. Still, the situation remained tense. His partner on the other end of the field was Shivnarayan Chanderpaul, another great batsman. Shivnarayan Chanderpaul tried to encourage Lara, but yet Lara keep only hitting 1 run and 2 run, and every time he hit 1 run and 2 run, the crowd will say, ooh, or the crowd will say, ah. But he kept on batting. He kept his mind fixed on that target, breaking Gary Sober's record of 365 runs. Very soon, he scored 336 runs. That was breaking another cricketer record, but that still wasn't Gary Sober's record. He continued batting. He passed 337, but there was still two more records to break. About a little bit into the match again, he's made 364 and he broke another record. Now the only record remaining to be broken was that of Gary Sobers. Could he do it? The crowd was quiet. You know, there was so many times then he tried to thief a little run and he ran 2 runs when he's supposed to really run 1 runs and everybody was anxious. Suppose Lara get run out, what could happen? That would be the end of that. But Lara was very brave and he was determined and he battled on. By the time he scored 357 runs, the crowds went in an uproar because he was only 9 runs away from scoring his goals. Everybody started to shout, 9 runs to go, 9 runs to go. The little bald-headed man who was in the stand said, I tell you he going to make it. He definitely going to make it. He's a Trini boy. He going to make it. He was talking to nobody in particular, but that's what everybody was thinking. So during the next over, his batting companion, Shivnarayan Chanderpaul, went over to him to calm him down, you know, to tell him that you could do this. Sometimes we need our friends to be able to support us. Chanderpaul was there to support him and to tell him, you are going to do this. Focus. So Lara focused. He wanted 6 runs again, and he hit a 4. One little shot was 4. And the crowd went crazy because now he needed 2 more runs to win. And Lara decided, you know, I could break Sober's record. I am a damn good batsman and I could break that record. He knew that he needed 2 runs again and he decided, well, I could break that record in style. So when the bowler come in, Brian Lara focused and he hit another 4. Boom, the records was broken. He had made his 360, he had passed the 365 that Gary Sobers had made. The crowd went wild. The whole crowd started to rush onto the field. Everybody wanted to congratulate him. And everybody, including Gary Sobers, who was there on the grounds himself, went out to the fields to say, well done. And the short little bald-head man who was so convinced that Lara would make it, he said to everybody, I tell you so, I tell you that boy going to break the record. And with that, Lara became the new world record holder for the most amount of runs made in a test cricket match. And he was a very proud young man. And the whole country of Trinidad and Tobago and the West Indies on the whole was very, very proud of Brian Lara. Thank you. That's my first story. And we're going to look at a little video now that shows you exactly what I just talked to you about.
165 not out. Atherton's got men in, saving the single, all round the ground. Atherton's piling the pressure on Lara, making him wait. He wants his fielders in the right position. Nothing in this game of cricket comes easy, nor should it. He's not going to give him this run. Sobers waits on the boundary edge. His nerves jangling as well. The field is set. Everybody but third man and long leg is saving the single. Here comes Chris Lewis to Brian Lara. He's gone for the pole, and there it is. Brian Lara's done it. The ball rockets into the boundary fence. The new world record holder is Brian Charles Lara of Trinidad and Tobago. What a moment for Trinidad and Tobago and West Indies cricket. Tony Cozier.
What a moment indeed. And these scenes will be repeated all over the Caribbean Wherever people are, they're jumping, they're joyous, they're jubilant. And here comes the man whose record has just been broken. Sir Gary Sobers there, waiting for the jubilant crowd to disperse from around.
Great. So you see exactly what I was talking about, that Lara was able to break that world record. Now I'm going to continue with another story. And the other story is, well, some of you might know about this one. It's called Tiger in the Forest and Nancy in the Web. Now, there was a lot of folk story that came from Africa when the African slaves were captured and brought to work in Trinidad and Tobago on the cane plantations. And this is one, and the whole stories of Anansi is one of that folklore that came to Trinidad with those African slaves, with our African ancestors here in Trinidad. Anansi was a spider and he was a trickster. He was always trying to outsmart everyone. And this story is called Tiger in the Forest, Anansi in the Web. Let's hear about Anansi. For a time, Anansi and Tiger were friends. Anansi used to like Tiger because Tiger was strong. And Tiger used to like Anansi because Anansi was clever. Tiger used to love to sit down and watch all the tricks that Anansi used to play on all the animals. You know, Anansi used to always use his wits to get everybody else to do work. So he would manage to persuade monkey and hen and dog and puss to share their meals with him. When everybody else was at work, Nancy was sitting down and relaxing. But yet he always had the best food to eat, and he always had a bag full, and his wife and children always had extra things. So then one day in the hot season, Anansi and Tiger went to the river for a swim. Tiger took with him a delicious stew that his wife had made. It had real large dumplings, it had thick gravy, and it had tender pieces of meat. This was Tiger's favorite dish, and it was also a dish that Anansi could not resist. As the two friends strolled down to the river, Nancy kept his eyes on that large tin of stew. The smell made his mouth water and he could hardly talk. And he began to think of ways to get that stew for himself. Let's try a new place for our swim, Tiger, said Anansi. You know, that place up by the rock where there's a deep hole, so deep that everybody call it a blue hole. Let's try there. Very well, replied Tiger. But you think you could swim in there, Anansi? That's kind of deep water, you know. Oh, Tiger, you swim so well. I don't have to worry. If I get in trouble, I know you will help me. Tiger, we are good friends. We share everything. Aha, but I can't share my lunch with you today, you know, Anansi. This stew of chicken is my favorite. My wife got the meat in the market and cooked it especially for me. You can smell how good it is, can't you, Anansi? Oh God, yes. Yes, yes, I could smell it, said Anansi. He could smell the stew and he was so tempted he could not take his eyes off the tin. At the blue hole, Anansi said, you know, Brother Tiger, you are so big. You go in and try the water first now. I will come in after you. Tiger replied, very well, Anansi. Very well, brother Anansi. I will put this tin of stew and no one can trouble it on this stump of an old cotton tree. There I can keep my eyes on it. Then I will dive in. But you must come in when I call you. I am not going to leave you with that stew there for long. You go first and try out the depth of the water. Go now, Tiger, I will come, said Anansi. Tiger dived in. Anansi shouted, try out the deep, deep part, Tiger, the deep, deep part where it looked blue, blue, yeah? Tiger loves swimming and diving. He took a deep breath and he dived, trying to reach the sandy bottom of the river. But the water was deeper than he expected, so he came up to the surface. He looked around quickly to make sure that his stew was safe, and he took a deep breath and he dived again. Now, when Tiger was under the water, Anansi emptied the tin of stew on a large green plantain leaf, and he put the tin back on the stump, and he sat in the shade relaxing where Tiger could see him. Then he quickly ate all the stew while Tiger went diving and swimming. At last, Tiger called out, "Oh gosh, come in, Anansi, come in." He could see the tin on the stump where he had left it. "Ah, soon I will have my lunch." Then he shouted to Anansi, "You are so lazy, Anansi. I am coming to throw you in the water." Anansi get frightened. What would Tiger do when he found out that tin was empty? Oh my God, what will he do? "No, Tiger, I'm frightened of the water. I don't want to be thrown in the water. I think I will go back home. I'm too frightened." Anansi hurried off to Big Monkey Town, which was only a mile away. And he said to Big Monkey, "Brother Monkey, you know I was down by the big blue hole with Tiger, and I heard somebody singing a song. And the song said, this is what it said. This lunchtime, I ate Tiger's stew. This lunchtime, I ate Tiger's stew. This lunchtime, I ate Tiger's stew. But Tiger didn't know." Big Monkey shouted at Anansi, "What nonsense you saying, Anansi? Run away. Leave our town. We don't want to hear your silly song, and we don't want no trouble from you." Anansi hurried on to Little Monkey Town. Little Monkey Town nearby, where all the monkeys live, all the small monkeys live. The small brown monkey, the capuchin monkey, and he said to them, "Brother Monkey, I heard a sweet song down by the river, and this is what it said. This lunchtime I ate Tiger's stew. This lunchtime I ate Tiger's stew. This lunchtime I ate Tiger's stew, but Tiger didn't know." That is a good dance song called Capuchin Monkey, who love nothing better than dancing. A very good dance song. Let's learn it. Let's all learn it. All the little monkeys began to learn the song. And they said to Anansi, "Sing it slowly now so we could get the tune right." Anansi sang the song over and over again until all the little monkeys had learned it. Then they said, "You know, Anansi, we have a big dance tonight, and you must come back and hear us sing the song." That evening, when Anansi heard the little monkeys singing the song and dancing, he hurried off to Tiger, who was in a rage, questioning animal after animal about his lunch. He said to Tiger, "Tiger, come with me and you will find out what you want to know. Do you know what they are singing in Little Monkey Town? Listen. This lunchtime, I ate Tiger's stew. This lunchtime, I ate Tiger's stew." The sound of singing and music was coming, and Tiger could hear it. "I can't get exactly what they're saying, Tiger, but I think it's something about eating your stew." Tiger listened. "They're singing about eating my stew? Nah!" Tiger and Anansi raced off to Little Monkey Town. "Hide in the bush, Tiger. So we have to make sure that they're really singing about your song. Let's hide in the bush and listen." And in the distance, they could hear the monkeys singing, little monkeys singing. "This lunchtime, I ate Tiger's stew, but Tiger didn't know." You hear that, Tiger? Asked Nancy. "Didn't I tell you? Listen again, hear it. This lunchtime, I ate tiger stew, but tiger didn't know. But now I know, said Tiger, breaking through the bushes into little Monkey Town with Anansi behind him. He leaped through an open window in the middle of the dance hall and he said, "So you ate my stew, did you? Who ate my stew?" "What are you talking about?" asked one of the little monkeys. "We learned that song from Anansi." Tiger was so vexed. "I'm going to teach all of you a lesson," he shouted, his teeth flashing in the light. Capuchin Monkey, the fastest runner of all, he ran off the big monkey tongue at full speed to get help because they were all so afraid when Tiger and Anansi started to attack the little monkeys. Soon a big troop of monkeys arrived, and at the sight of them, Tiger got frightened and he ran off. And he lives in the forest even till today. And Nancy was frightened almost out of his wits, and he climbed to the top of the house and he lives there safe in his web, hiding from all the monkeys. The end. So that's my two stories to you. And I hope that you enjoyed it. The first one was on Brian Lara, and the second one was on Anansi, which is a folklore that have been that came all the way from Africa with the African slaves who came to Trinidad. Okay. So I want to continue by talking to you a little bit more about Trinidad. I know that some of you would have heard of Trinidad from cricket mainly, but I thought it would be nice to tell you a little more about my country. This is a picture of my national flag, the national flag of Trinidad and Tobago. It is red, black, and white. The red symbolizes fire and represents courage of the people. The black symbolizes the earth and it represents dedication, while the white symbolizes water and represents purity and equality. Now, in my country, we have various ethnic groups. We have Africans, we have people of African origin, of Indian origin, of Syrian origin, of European origins. And I wanted to share a few pictures with you all of volunteers with my NGO so you can see how mixed my country is. This is because of our strong history where so many different people came to our country, to my country. So we had people who came from all over. And we have such a mixture of ethnic groups because of our history. We were first inhabited by the Amerindian people. They were known, the main groups who came to settle in Trinidad were the Kalinagos and the Tainos. And they settled in Trinidad way before the arrival of the Europeans. The first Europeans who came to my country, to this part of the world, were the Spanish. Some of you would have learned about Christopher Columbus. So Christopher Columbus was the first Spaniard and the first European to land in Trinidad and Tobago. And very soon after that, we became a Spanish colony. Then after we became a Spanish colony, Britain fought to take over Trinidad and Tobago and we became a British colony. Then when we were under British rule, African slaves were captured and they were brought from Africa to work on the sugarcane plantations. When slavery was abolished in 1833, the British planters needed to get another source of labor. So they went to India and they brought Indian laborers from places like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, different areas, and they transported them from the port of Calcutta and they brought them to Trinidad to work on the sugarcane fields. This was something called the Indian indentureship system. And that's why, as one of the viewers said earlier, I look Indian. I look Indian because my ancestors came from India. It's not recently, it happened from 1845 to 1920. This Indian indentureship labor scheme was here, took place here. So I think my great grandparents came from India. And today, 42% of the population of Trinidad are of Indian origin, and another 42% are of African origin, and the rest of the population is very mixed. So, because of the different people who came here, we have different religions. For example, we have Hindus, we have Muslims, we have Christians and Rastafarians, and so on. We celebrate Diwali and we celebrate Eid ul-Fitr. They are both national holidays here. We also celebrate Easter, which is a national holiday, and we celebrate Christmas. But Christmas is celebrated by every single person. It's very, very common in Trinidad. And one of the things that some of you might have heard about Trinidad is that we have one of the most beautiful carnival in the world. Carnival is very big, and we usually start partying. Here we call it fetting. From the beginning of the year straight onto Carnival, which is normally in February or March. Carnival started in the 1800s when the African slaves got their freedom. When they got their freedom, they took to the streets to celebrate. And there were massive street parties all over. And that is the same way that Carnival is celebrated today. We're going to play a video for you now so you can get a little idea of what Carnival is like. Okay, so these are some of the costumes that you would see. So the second video, the kings and queens, these are the ones who compete at the competitions that we have here.
Was meant to be, I go find you. I ain't gonna end up behind you. Right behind you. Charmin', they right behind you. Come, let me do it today. Let me do it today. And I'm sure to see you tomorrow. Don't tell me about tomorrow. I need it today. I will take it today. I ain't sure to get them tomorrow.
What you could do when you get this ching chong, ching chong, ching chong.
I don't know.
What you could do when bum bum ding dong, ding dong. How you could deal with all this magic when I make that bum bum dip like this.
I mean, no lie.
Okay, so you got a good idea of what some of our costumes look like. Now, the music that you were hearing in that video is what we call soca music. We are the home of calypso and soca music. And for you to get a good idea of soca music, I'm going to play another short clip for you with one of our top soca artists. His name is Marshall Montano, and he has taken soca music all over the world. So it will give you a good idea of what our music is like. Here is Marshall Montano.
Don't blow our run! Here we go! 1, 2, 3, Every day is better, I come up with better.
More than you.
I come up with better.
And more than
I
you.
got the wine and drop and I shot to get shit. Cause when I'm betting off,
Just do it like a boss.
Affected man, you ready? This is my home, I'm not leaving. I can't get over this feeling. I just got to play this. Let me play.
Now, because we have so much different people who came to Trinidad and we have such a distinct ethnic component in our country and we have people who are so mixed, we have some of the best music in the world. And what you just saw was soca music. But we also have something called chutney music. And chutney music is something that developed here in Trinidad with the arrival of the Indian indented laborers. And over the years, our chutney music have fused with soca music to produce something called chutney soca. And this next video is going to show you a sample of what our chutney soca music look like. This is the fusion between African and Indian, and this is one of our rich music. It's our identity. So here is some chutney soca. Indian la way, and the drum in the tassa, drum in the tassa. Yeah, so that is chutney soca. And I should tell you that we get all the Bollywood music and everything here, but our local performers, they mix it with soca, they mix it with chutney, and they do so much really amazing music that comes out of it. We are also, Trinidad and Tobago is also the home of the steel pan and the tassa. And some of you would know about the steel pan. The steel pan was the only musical instrument to be developed in the 20th century. And I'm going to play a little clipping for you to get an idea of what the steel pan is like. We play every and any kind of music on the steel pan. So when we have events, you might even hear Bollywood songs being played on the steel pan. Here's the steel pan. And in addition to the steel pan, the next very distinct instruments that we have is called the tassa drum. And the tassa drum, it didn't really come with our Indian ancestors, but it was something that was developed here. So here's an idea of what our tassa drums look like. It's one of those instruments that is very, very common at weddings, at all kind of parties and so on. Here's the tassa. Okay, so there you go. You get an idea of our music, you get an idea of carnival. You know, there's so much more that I would love to tell you about Trinidad and Tobago. We are known for our food. We have something called doubles. We have Bacon Shack. I hope that one day you all can come and visit us, and you can visit our beaches, and you can see all the beautiful tropical plants and animals. There's so much about this little island, these two little islands, that that you could enjoy and that you can see. And this was a brief introduction to my country. There's so much more I want to tell you, but maybe you can experience it yourself when you visit. I want to say thank you very much to Sujit and to Bakul for giving me this opportunity to share my country with you. I enjoyed reading to you today about Brian, Lara, and about Anansi. And I hope that you will continue to read stories from Trinidad and Tobago, those that you may find at Bakul Library, those that you may find online. Thank you all so much for letting me take part in this today. It was a privilege.
Just to let you know, guys, we are not over. Now is the best part when you get to ask Radhika questions. So some of you have already been asking questions, but in the comments box, those of you who have not, please write down your questions, anything, and Radhika will answer the questions. I think we'll begin, Radhika, with Adhyasha and Satyabrata asking, what is chutney? Why is it called chutney? You talked about chutney music, but why is it called chutney?
Now that's a very interesting question. But chutney is also a dish, and I think you have chutney in India. You have different types of chutney that you would have, anchar and so on. So I think because the music is so spicy and the music is so hype up, it got its name from that dish. And I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but the chutney music in Trinidad is really spicy music. It's meant to make you get up and want to dance.
So I think there is someone asking if you love Indian food. Supriya is asking, do you love Indian food? You talked about chutney so much.
Yeah, so Supriya, I was lucky enough to study in India, so I love authentic Indian food. But the food that we have in Trinidad that is of Indian origin is very different from what you all have in India. So, for example, we don't use all the spices that you use in India. And our curry and so on are made here in Trinidad. So it has a very distinct taste. And it's not the same that you will find in India. We have things like dal, rajma dal and all those things. We have different type of roti. We have dal puri. We have what we call basabshat roti, which is we call it paratha actually, but it's not the paratha that you find in India. So it's very much distinct from Indian food in India, but it's very, very popular in Trinidad because it's so very tasty. And in addition to that, we have something called doubles, which vaguely resembles what you call, I think, chola bhatura. I think, but it's so very distinct because there's so many different local flavors that are used, local chutneys that are used with it. So I love authentic Indian food. Authentic Indian food is found in restaurants in Trinidad, but our Trini Indian food is awesome.
So I think Venkat was asking about food items in your country, which you've already answered. Rudrashti is asking, what is your favorite food? Did you answer that?
No. No, I didn't. But my favorite food here in Trinidad is bacon and shack. It's very, very common if you go to Maracas Beach, which is one of our most popular beaches in Trinidad. And in addition to that, I cannot live without what we call doubles. Doubles is basically two bake with chana in the middle. But what makes it so distinct from anything that you'll find in India is that they're so many different chutneys that are put on it, and that adds a very distinct flavor. And it's referred to as street food here in Trinidad. But really, I just love food.
So I think Suhani had also asked about your traditional food, which I think you've answered already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, because of our history, with the arrival of the African slaves, we have a lot of African dishes as well. Well, based on that, we use a lot of provisions, things like sweet potatoes and things like that we make. And then we have the Indian influence, and then we also have a local Chinese population. And Trinidadian Chinese food is different from what you find out there, because they might use spices that the other ethnic groups cook with, and so on. So the food is really very distinct to Trinidad.
So Snehalata is asking, which is your favorite place in India?
Oh, wow, that's a hard one. I know that if I don't say Bhubaneswar, Sujit will have my head. But really, one of the things that I did when I traveled around, when I was in India, when I was studying, is I used to go on these weekend trips all over, and I truly fell in love with Rishikesh for two reasons. One, in Trinidad, Hinduism is very much a part of our everyday life. We celebrate Diwali, we have pujas at our homes, we celebrate Ganesh Utsav and things like that. And I love Rishikesh because I love going to the Ghats. I love seeing the Aarti in those areas. But even more, I love Rishikesh for whitewater rafting. That for me was one of the big things, because I grew up on an island and I'm accustomed to going to beaches, and Delhi is landlocked. So I missed that when I was in Delhi. But when you went to Rishikesh and you were able to raft down the river and so on, I absolutely fell in love with it. But then there are places like Jaipur that I absolutely love. So it's very difficult for me to say I have a favorite place. And I know that I haven't been to a lot of different places in India. So I hope that, when COVID-19 ease up and we can go back to traveling, that I can visit again. But I really, really loved all those different things. And I love that there's so much variety and you could do so many different things.
So Ullas is asking, have you come to Orissa?
Yes, I did. I had a conference, and that's where I met Sujit. And it was in Bhubaneswar. And I remember visiting some places. I remember going around Bhubaneswar with Sujit, actually. And I remember that there was one day when we were free, and another participant from the conference and I took, we hired a vehicle and we went to the very, very rural areas because we wanted to see more of India. And it was very beautiful, very beautiful.
Yeah.
So I need to interrupt you, Sujit, and I need to tell our viewers that India is massive compared to my little island of Trinidad and Tobago. We could go around Trinidad in a couple of days. You can go around the whole of Tobago in one day. So it's two completely different countries. But yet there are so many similarities in terms of the religion and in terms of some aspect of our culture, because of that history of having Indian indented laborers come in here in the 18 and 1900s. And it's really unique in that way because of the mixture that we have.
So Adit is asking, have you visited any Indian monuments or temples?
Yes, many, many. In Bhubaneswar, as well as my favorite, of course, is the Taj, because I find it such a perfect structure. But around Delhi, around Jaipur, around different places, I was fortunate enough to visit them. And again, I want to tell our viewers that if you come to Trinidad, you will see our landscape is scattered with temples and mosques, which is our Indian what our Indian ancestors introduced us and gave us. That is our legacy. So all over Trinidad, you will see temples and you would see mosques, and they're so very beautiful structures as well. So when I visited India and I visited these temples, it reminded me a lot about my country, but yet it was so different because your monuments are massive structures and they're so beautifully designed and so on, whereas ours are very nice, simple, very different.
Well, we've done a lot of food, but this is Nilanjana asking, what's the best food in your country?
Oh gosh, Nilanjana, it's so very difficult to tell you one. You have to try all the different foods. You have to try Bacon Shack when you go to the beach. You have to try doubles when you just lime in and you want street food. You have to try things like corn soup and macaroni pie. There's so many different ones, but those are the most popular ones, and those are the ones that, people would, any visitor come, any tourist who come, I make sure that they try those.
Yeah. So Adyant is asking, what makes Trinidad and Tobago so diverse? I think you've talked about it. Maybe you can just say a little more.
Mainly because of our history and because so many different groups of people came to Trinidad. So as I said, before the arrival of the Europeans, before the arrival of Columbus, we had the indigenous people, which was the Taino and the Kalinago. And they have left their legacy, although they're not as vibrant because under Spanish colonization, so many of them were killed out. But then the Spanish came in, so we had the introduction of the Roman Catholic religion. We had that Spanish history where some of our place names are Spanish names, the Spanish language was introduced. Then we were colonized by the British, so then the Anglican religion and Pentecostal and all those other religions came in. Then when the African slaves came in, we have that whole big African legacy. Religions such as the Spiritual Baptist and the Orisha and Voodoo and Obia and those things came in with our African ancestors. And then on top of all that, we had Indians who came in as indented laborers. So we have that Indian legacy of religions like Hinduism and Islam and temples and mosques and so on. And added to all that, we had Chinese and Syrians who migrated to Trinidad. So we have their history as well and their contribution. So when you put all these things together, you get a very distinct group because the cultures doesn't exist separately. There's a lot of mixture. There's a lot of blending of cultures, and that's what makes it so unique.
So, Justina is asking, what is your favorite movie from India?
Now that's a good one. I haven't looked at Indian movies, Bollywood movies. Well, first to begin, we only get the Bollywood movies. We get the ones that are very popular. So I haven't looked at them for a long time. I think the last time is when I was in India. But recently, just last week, I started going back to some that I had seen already. And I remember the last one I saw, which was 2 days ago, was Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. And there was also Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, which I like those. But, I look at them and I don't really think they reflect India. They're Bollywood. They're made for public consumption. So I wish that we would get some of those that deal with more serious issues. But unfortunately, we don't. Maybe I have to come back to India to see those.
So you like Karan Johar movies?
Yeah, well, that's what we get, really.
Yeah. Okay. Raj Mitra is asking, what is your favorite food from Orissa? Do you remember anything?
No, I don't actually. I'm sorry.
Remember,
I remember having everything.
I was responsible for deciding the menu on one particular day in that conference. Anyway, Rajashri is asking, West Indies is a famous name in cricket, but how many islands comes under it? So Trinidad, West Indies, the relationship. Maybe you can just tell a bit.
Yeah, so the West Indies comprise 15 English-speaking countries and territories that are all located in the Caribbean. And West Indies, um, they're all each distinct islands. They're each distinct countries. And the one time that they all come together and that you have that sense of nationalism is for cricket. So whereas Trinidad and Jamaica and Barbados have their own individual cricket teams, and we play in our 2020 matches and the Caribbean League and so on, the West Indies cricket team represent all of them. So we have players from Trinidad and Guyana and Jamaica and all these who make up the West Indies cricket team. So that's the one time when all, they have players from all these 15 islands and they play for the West Indies cricket team and they play internationally. So it's 15 different countries that made up the West Indies.
Wait. You know that it is Ganesh Puja today. Did you celebrate Ganesh Puja?
So because we have had a surge in COVID-19 cases, and we are now back in partial lockdown, and our public health ordinance says that we cannot have gatherings of more than 5 persons. So all our Ganesh Utsav celebration have been cancelled or changed to online. So we have Ganesh Puja at the temples that are being streamed online. And normally we would have the Visarjan, and that would be a big procession going to immerse the Murtis in the sea. But all that has been cancelled. So we don't have any big celebration because of COVID-19 restriction measures right now.
But is Ganesh Puja celebrated by only people of Indian origin or by everyone?
So Ganesh Puja is one of those things that is now becoming big in Trinidad. In the last 5 years or so, the processions have been becoming bigger and so on. And it is celebrated by the Hindu community in Trinidad. But the celebration has a Trini flavor to it. So when you see the Murtis going, when you see that, the procession with the Murtis going to the sea, for example, you would see that they'll be accompanied by these massive music trucks playing music. And that is something that is very common during carnival time. So, local culture comes into it, and it's a very distinct local celebration of Ganesh Utsav, but it's celebrated by the Hindu population. And it's not one of the biggest celebrations. Our biggest celebration is Diwali. Diwali is actually a public holiday here in Trinidad, and that is celebrated by the entire population. I need this charger doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so I think you've already talked a bit. Yeah, I was going to ask you about Diwali, but you've already answered that. So Minnie was asking about Corona in Trinidad. So it's quite bad. You just mentioned now.
Yeah. So in March this year, we had our first set of COVID cases, and we put things in place, and the country had a complete lockdown. But then we got rid of all the cases. We only had 10 deaths, and everybody recovered from it. And we started opening back. We didn't open back up our borders. Our airport is still closed, but we started opening back like restaurants and cinemas and beaches and so on. And we just had our general election.
I think she'll be just joining us, but till I think Radica, there's a little lag. But just till then, because there were some questions, there was a little question about since when has Bakul? Yeah, I was just okay. Radica, yes, please go on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got cut off. I don't know what was the last thing, but I'm saying that we now have our second wave of COVID, so we're back into restrictions again.
Yeah, there have been quite a few questions about books. Pushpalata is asking, then there's Tanya who's been asking. So any Indian books that you've read that you liked?
Unfortunately, most of the Indian books that I have read have been very academic history books, because my PhD thesis was on the end of Indian indentureship, and my master's was on modern Indian history. So I have read lots and lots of Indian historian books.
but not storybooks.
Not storybooks so much.
Okay.
Is Mowgli an Indian character?
Well, he was set in India. The
Yeah.
Jungle Book was.
Yeah, that's about it then.
Ah. Okay. So a lot of there's Ekta also asking about what type of stories do you like? Do you like to tell stories? What kind of stories do you like telling?
So the Anansi stories are very big here in Trinidad because of our African ancestors. And the Anansi story is actually very symbolic to the African slaves who came to Trinidad, because Anansi was this trickster. He was always trying to get out of working, and he was always trying to fool people and trick people. And during slavery, the African slaves would try to get away from the severe conditions during slavery and all the bad treatment and so on. So they identify with Anansi, and that's why Anansi have passed on today. And I really love those set of stories of Anansi. I also love the stories that we have of our popular West Indians who have done so much to bring international attention to Trinidad, to the West Indies on the whole, such as those of the cricketers like Brian Lara and Sir Garfield Sobers. And it's really nice reading those, because you learn so much about the West Indies and about Trinidad from reading these stories.
Yeah. So I think Trupti was asking a question about if there are more Anansi stories. So as Radhika just said,
Yes.
Anansi is a very famous character, a trickster. Like in India, we have the monkey and the crocodile story. So there are these trickster tales where a less powerful animal actually tricks a more powerful one. This is a book in the Bakul library, the same image that Radhika talked about. This is Anansi the spider, another story. We have another book also called Anansi's Feast. So there's a whole series, as she says, which are primarily West African in origin, and you have them, and because of the African influence, like the Indian influence in Trinidadian life and culture, the Anansi stories are also very popular there. We can go on and on. There are many other questions, but in a way, I think a lot of questions we have answered. There was another question about, I think someone had asked, I forget the name, about since when has Bakul been telling stories, or Bakul Foundation. So we started with a library, a children's library. We'll just show a little video at the end now. Now, at the library, ever since the library started, we have been doing storytelling. So some of you might have attended the Bhufesto, the Bhubaneswar Festival of Storytelling, which happened during the World Cup, Hockey World Cup, 2 years back. So that was organized by us, curated by us. So similarly, we've been doing storytelling sessions at our library, outside, and now because of COVID, now that the libraries are closed, we are doing storytelling online. This is the first time we're doing online storytelling, but we have been doing that all the time. Thank you, Radhika, very much. I think all of us had a great time. But the last point, I think I would like you to answer, because there are people who have been asking, what is the time in Trinidad now, and what is the best time of the year to visit Trinidad? And there are people who have asked for your address so that they visit you. So to them, I will say that please write to us. We'll connect you with Radhika. But what is the time now, and what is the best time of the year to visit Trinidad?
So
You've already converted people. You're doing a lot for Trinidadian tourism.
So it's 12:40 in the afternoon. We are 9.5 hours behind India. So you in the night, we still in the afternoon here, Saturday afternoon. You can visit Trinidad anytime, because we just have two seasons for the year. We have the rainy season, we have the dry season and the wet season. The wet season starts from June and goes down to November, and the rest of the time is dry season. But our average temperature in Trinidad is 26 degrees Celsius throughout the year. So you have really nice weather all the time. It's warm, it's pleasant. It might get very hot in the dry season, but it never goes beyond 34, 35 degrees, and that's exceptionally hot days. The average is 26 degrees Celsius. So you can visit anytime. If you come in for partying, if you come into Lime, then Carnival is the time to come, because there are lots of things happening all the time. If you want to experience Tobago beaches, you can come anytime. The beaches are beautiful. So basically, come anytime.
Okay, right. So thank you, Radica, once again. And before we end, of course, a little quiz. You see this little video, and you have to guess the country from which the next storyteller is going to come from. We're going to show you a little video. He doesn't have it. Okay. Yeah. So you have to guess the country in which most part of this waterfall is. Spectacular waterfall.
Beautiful. Where is it gonna fall? It's gonna fall, it's gonna fall.
Okay.
I don't know.
Now you have to
Just
guess.
stop.
Yeah. So you have to guess which is the country. Now, this waterfall actually is on the border between two
Brazil.
big countries, but the major part of this waterfall is this particular country from which our next storyteller next Saturday at 9 p.m. is going to come from. And thank you very much. You remember I told you that there is a feedback form in which we would like you to post your feedbacks. And please remember, if you take photos of yourself or videos of yourself while listening to the stories, please share it with us at contactbakul at gmail.com. CONTACTBAKUL at gmail.com. Please share your photos on that email, and we would like to share it on social media on our platforms. And as I said again, we are, yes, that's, you have the email ID on the screen. And as I said, we are running this campaign right now about any used smartphone that you have which is no longer being used. Please donate it so that children can study. We will run that short promo once again, and see you. And then after that, we will show a little video on Bakul for those who want to know more. The promo video now.
Give me freedom, give me fire, give me home, take me higher. Give me freedom, give me fire, give me home, take me higher.
Yeah. So you can send your phones to Bakul Foundation. The address is 16 Satyanagar, Bhubaneswar 751007. That's our address. If you Google us, you'll find that. And the phone number, please make a note of it. You can call on this number to coordinate 977 8686 786. So this is the number on which you can call as well. Tata, bye-bye. See you next time. And a short video on Bakul if you're interested.